G'day guys, my name is Tomo and welcome to Tomo's Tune-Ups. We are discussing everything rubber cones and adjustable trumpets in this episode. So let's jump straight into it. The first one we have is the Evo cone. So the part number there is FAM3968EVO. This is the evolution cone and has been evolved over time that the Classic Mini has been on the road, all the way from the late 50s all the way up to the early 2000s. So if you're after a direct factory replacement, this is the best comfort and durability that you can have in a Classic Mini or Moke, and will give you the best soft ride. The next one is the red dot cone. It is denoted by the red dot along with this one that has a yellow dot. The difference between this one and the Evo cone is the red dot is a little bit more of a firmer ride. So it's going to compromise drivability, but depending on how often you drive the vehicle and how far you're driving it, this is a really good option to do. I run these in my 74 Leyland Mini. It does compromise drivability and ride comfort, but because it's on historic plates, it doesn't matter too much. These are a really good option, but as I said, it is going to compromise the drivability just that little bit. So make sure you're wise in when you're choosing when to do this. If you're driving it every day and commuting and you're doing 50, 60 plus kilometers each way, it's probably not the cone for you. But if you drive the absolute crap out of it, it's probably a good choice. The next one, which I would only recommend for competition use only, is the yellow dot cone. So this is the most extreme version that you can possibly get to suit a Classic Mini. Now, these are a wear and tear item and they do wear over time. So if your suspension's starting to sag and it's not handling the way that it did when you first bought it, chances are these need to be replaced. So yellow dot I would only use for a competition use only. On to trumpets. This is a billet aluminium or aluminum, depending where you are in the world, adjustable trumpet. So what you need to do is just wind it all the way out and all the way in, depending how high you want your vehicle to sit. Now, the only downside with this is it doesn't have a drain hole here whatsoever, which we'll get to that in a minute in these. The really good thing about these are they are cheap and they are affordable. The only tip that I would say to you is when you are installing these, pull the threaded section all the way out, grease it with some high temp bearing grease, reinstall it, and just pack a little bit of grease on the inside here. That'll just help to prevent any water getting through there and seizing. Ask me how I know, or check it out in the video above. The next option you have is a really good replacement. So this one is the Rip Speed High-Low. So a high-low is able to be adjusted high or it can be adjusted low, hence the term high-low. So this one is really good because it has a drain hole. Now the drain hole is generally fitted only at the front of Minis or Mokes, because if anything, as we know, gravity is always going to start at the highest point, and if you let it go, it's going to work its way down. So if you are driving through the rain, you're washing your engine on a regular basis, all the water is going to sit in the lowest spot and it's generally going to sit inside here. Now if it doesn't have a drain hole, it's not going to be able to drain out, and in that case it then gets a bit of swarf inside there and then seizes. You're not going to have a very good time. So these are a really good option. They are a little bit more expensive, but they are a good option to do. If you're going to be doing it, you want to make sure that you adjust or replace both front and rear trumpet adjusters. So the reason for that is you don't want to have the front sitting too low and the back sitting too high. Generally, most cars have a bit of rake, which means the front is lower than the rear, but it's going to give you optimum braking and performance at the front axle. The next one is two different types. Now these are manufactured in Australia and they do have a soft ride, which is this one here, and a standard ride, which is this one here. Now, how do you determine firm and soft rides or even a harder ride? Well, it is to do with the lip on the shoulder here. The smaller the lip, the more the rubber cone can wrap around it. So the cone, as it compresses, it's going to start to wrap around this edge here. Whereas if we swap this one over here, it's got more surface area, therefore it's going to give a firmer ride. If you want to really step it up, you want to be fitting the Rip Speed. Now, the firmer the car is going to be, the better handling it's going to have, but the compromise that you're going to have is it is going to be stiffer. So it's not going to be as comfortable as what the Evo cone is. Now, depending on the driving style that you're doing, you want to mix and match depending on what you are doing with the vehicle. So if you're doing long distance, I would recommend the smaller alloy trumpet with an Evo cone. That way it's going to give the best, most comfortable ride. If you want to step it up a little notch, you want to have a little bit better handling, but also a little bit softer, you can mix and match the cone. So I'd probably go a red dot cone with one of these. If not, I'd probably even step it up to the setup that I have, which is the Rip Speed with the red dot cone. That's going to give a really good performance. If you really wanted to step it up a notch, you would then get the yellow cone and probably run it with a Rip Speed high-low. And if that's the case, you're probably just doing track days, so you can compromise a bit of drivability for the way that the car handles, because it is going to stick like crap to a blanket. So guys, you can mix and match any of these, but I hope it's given you a bit more of an indication. The quick little Tomo's tech tip before we go is, when you are doing and installing these, it is important that if you're going to use the ones with the drain hole goes at the front axle. The rear, it doesn't matter too much, so you can mix and match the high-lows, but if you want to just buy a complete set, that's not a problem. When you're installing it, make sure that you remove the bolt completely, fill it full of high-temp bearing grease, and then reinstall it. As I said, this will help to prevent any swarf getting inside there and prevent it seizing. Also, while you're there, because it does have a ball joint that sits directly on here, the front axle anyway, the rear, it's got the long rod, and then it has the ball joint. Replace the ball joint and the cup itself. They are a wear and tear item. You can service them by pulling them out, re-greasing them, replacing the boot and the nylon cup, but they do wear over time. If you're going to the extent of upgrading the rubber cones and the trumpets with your vehicle, you might as well replace the ball joint itself on the front upper control arm or even the rear trailing arm. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope it's given you some insight into what Minisport offers and the different types of rubber cones and trumpet selection that they have. Make sure to check out the website, minisport.com.au, and we'll see you here on another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups.